started.
How are you guys? Hope everybody's well.
First question is going to come from Tom Moore, Vince. Tom, go ahead and unmute.
Hey, Vince, how are you?
What's up, Tom?
I was just, wondering if, correct me if I'm wrong, you started working for the Sixers when Billy King was there. So, you've been through a bunch of regimes. And I was just wondering, I know it hasn't been a lot of time, but in terms of draft preparation or draft philosophy, what you've seen from Daryl?
Yeah, obviously, I think there's still a lot to learn still from that question. I think the one thing that immediately comes through with Daryl is kind of the pace at which he works, and trying to keep up with that. From a philosophical standpoint, I think we still got a couple days to go. It's hard to say. It's hard to say right now to like where exactly his head is and how he's going to view those 5 picks. I think where I'm happy is our scouting staff was on the ready, and once we got Daryl on board, I think we quickly were able to prepare him where we were on all of these guys. Obviously, Houston didn't have picks up. I mean, they didn't have any, let alone went up in the first round. So I think our goal was to catch him up on these guys as quick as possible.
Could I quick follow up? The reason they didn't have picks is he traded them both for for players at the deadline in February. Is that a sort of a difference at all in terms of the more of a emphasis on perhaps trying to get better now as opposed to drafting guys and developing longer? Has there been any shift in that respect?
Trading picks?
Yeah.
I think what you have to do is kind of go through every option and any possible scenario at any of those picks, so you're prepared to make the right decision when you're on the clock or leading into the draft. I think we're prepared to execute whichever one of those we see as best at that moment.
Great.
Thank you.
Let's go to Derek Bodner next.
Hey, Vince. What would you consider to be the overall strengths and weaknesses of this draft, and what might be available?
It's a hard question to answer. I think usually, when you look back at drafts, outside of those top few picks that really kind of dictate whether a draft is good or not, it's a little bit of the eye of the beholder. If you're in the teens or whatever, and you want to find a big, or you want to find a wing or guard or scorer or perimeter defender or whatnot, I think you can kind of lean towards whichever direction you want. I think this draft is pretty similar. Like, it provides a lot of options at a lot of different positions or a lot of different archetypes. And if you value one, you probably view that as the strength of this draft.
Next, we'll go to Kai Carlin.
Hey, Vince. I know you guys have had a couple of draft interviews with a couple of prospects. I was wondering what you talk to these guys about. What are you looking for when it comes to these draft interviews?
That's a great question. You don't want to think you've learned too much about a guy after 40 minutes, but just to get a sense of who they are, how they think the game. Like, we like to dig in a lot of kind of on-court analysis. If you can put them through some hypothetical spots on the floor, and how do you think of this, and how do you think through this play, and here's a play that we saw you struggle with in college. What may or may not have been the causes there. So you like to get a sense of how well they can talk the game, and how well, when they're in a room with Coach Rivers, are they going to be able to pick up his direction and how quick, or are we going to need, if we bring them in, are we going to need them, to have a little bit more personal touch in the background to catch them up on things. But it's hard. I mean, it's 30, 40 minutes on a Zoom call. You don't want to think you've learned everything there is to know about a guy. So we lean much more, especially now, given the extra time, we talk to so many people that have been around these guys going back through high school. So we think we have a pretty good grasp of it, well before the interview processes get going.
Thank you.
Let's next go to Noah Levick.
Hey, Vince, with the front office changes that happened during this process, who was involved in these virtual interviews? And then on draft night, how are decisions going to be made and who is going to have input?
With regards to the interviews, we've kind of gone through every iteration. You know, I've generally been on a lot of them and led them. Matt Lilly, our G League GM, has been on a lot of them and led them, and then like various members of our scouting staff or front office at various times. With regards to draft night, obviously Daryl is, you know, president of basketball operations and is gonna lead those decisions. I think Elton and you know, Coach Rivers are also like very key to his world right now. So I think, you know, those guys are going to work together, and we as a scouting staff are going to get them all the information they need to make whatever decision, you know, comes our way.
Thanks.
Let's go to Kyle Newbeck next.
Hey Vince, so obviously in a normal year, you guys operate on a pretty strict timeline, the tournaments in March, the lotteries in May, and so on and so forth. So with how unorthodox this year is, do you have any concerns that maybe, you know, you could overthink something that you thought you knew in May or June, or are you guys just happy to have the extra prep time?
No, it's a great question. You know, the more you study a guy, like you want to make sure you're not chasing ghosts or, you know, overanalyzing any of this. I think as time goes by, if our group collectively starts to change their opinion on a guy, or, you know, one specific member of our group has a new opinion on a guy, we just need to dig into why. Like, what specifically did you watch or read, or who did you talk to that like altered your opinion for better or worse, and why? And like, can you stand by that, like if questioned on it? So we encourage everybody to change their opinions. I think that's how you get to the right endpoint. But we just want to be really, really, really cautious to know that it's like, you know, we're not falling victim to so-and-so rising on the draft board. If we think the guy is just a better shooter than we thought, or a better playmaker or what have you than we thought, like, okay, like provide the evidence and we'll adjust to it. But we've talked about that a lot as a staff, exactly what you said. Like, let's be cautious about, you know, this new schedule and this new, you know, 6 months or whatever we had to do to get ready for this draft. It's certainly not normal.
Thanks, Vince.
Let's next go to Keith Pompey. Keith, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, what's up, Vince? How you doing?
Hey, Keith.
All right. Hey, Vince, what would you say, you know, last year you guys are looking for perimeter defenders and shooters. What would you say the biggest need is for this team for this upcoming draft?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look back at last year, I don't know that, you know, we ended up with Matisse and Mar in the second round. I don't know that there was a specific target for, like, you know, a perimeter defender. I think if we didn't get Matisse, we probably would have ended up with somebody in a much different profile. And similar to this year, like, our primary focus is to get guys that can, like, you know, 1, 2, 3 years down the road are still in the league and useful. Whatever skill they're providing, we just hope there's somebody we can put on the court and you know, contribute. Is our like primary focus.
Has there been a lot of differences the way you guys approach it? I know you have Daryl now, but I'm talking about before that. Has there been a lot of differences the way you guys approach this draft compared to seasons past?
I don't think so, honestly. Obviously, like, the process is massively different, but as far as approach, I would say it's been fairly similar.
Thanks, man.
Let's next go to Paul Hudrick.
Hey, Vince. You know, there was, with how well Oklahoma City played this year, you know, that pick conveys for you guys and you get it. First of all, were you kind of like a lot of Sixers fans kind of on pins and needles wondering if you'd get that pick? And then once you kind of, you know, solidified you were getting it, how did that kind of change your process?
I think we were prepared. You know, we wanted to prepare like we had that draft pick throughout the season. That night, you know, we were all Mike Muscala fans, I guess. And it was a pretty wild turn of events for us to end up with that pick. But I think all along, you know, we never know what trade may or may not come up and what pick you may or may not end up with. So we try to prepare, you know, from one to whatever every year, to the extent that it's possible.
Let's go next to Rich Hoffman.
Hey, Vince. Keith kind of asked this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper on it. What has the process been of Daryl stepping in as somebody who, you know, like you said, is now running things, but wasn't with you for most of the draft process?
It's been great, honestly. I know that's not what you were asking, but it has been great. I think we've all been kind of in a firefight because, you know, he's been here for 2 weeks and we need to catch him up. And we felt really, really prepared to be able to do it. And I think, you know, the good thing is that we tend to think similarly on players. So that's helpful. But yeah, so it's, you know, if you think of it from Daryl's standpoint, like he's coming in, he needs to catch up on the roster. He needs to catch up on our coaching staff, our front office, the draft. You know, I think we're all lucky that he's obviously like well qualified to do it. But I don't know that the process has necessarily changed. It's just, you know, instead of informing Elton and talking through all of this draft, all of the draft related, you know, possible transactions or players or what have you, like with Daryl and our scouting staff, it's now with Daryl, or with Elton and our scouting staff, it's now with Elton and Daryl, and obviously Peter Dinwiddie as well, to be ready for Wednesday.
Let's go to Don Hunt.
Okay, Vince, how you doing?
How are you?
Okay. How much do you guys look at the local talent here, you know, in the Big Five and in the city and that sort of thing? Because we've had some great players over the years. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
No question. Yeah, we study them tons. You know, they're in our backyard. We get to see them live way more than we do other teams. Just, you know, even if we're scouting somebody that's coming through Temple, it means we see Temple in extra time. And obviously the talent's been pretty impressive over the last few years, especially coming out of Villanova. So yeah, we're well aware. We're obviously really close with all the staffs around here as well. So, you know, we feel pretty comfortable with the information we have on the Big Five crew.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Mark Narducci next.
Vince, I was wondering, do you guys use a version of football's Wonderlic tests on these guys? And if so, how important would you say that is?
I'm only like vaguely familiar with that. So I don't want to go into the NFL thing. We don't have anything similar that we use. I'll say that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to Dave Uram.
Hey, Vince. Daryl got here a couple of weeks ago. In terms of the draft, which is coming up in a couple of days, how is the collaboration process, from what you can tell, going like between Daryl, Elton, the new guys in the front office like Peter, Prosper, and as well as everybody on your staff?
I think it's been great, honestly. I was actually thinking this yesterday as we were going through a meeting. There's not a newness, you know. It kind of feels, as we're arguing through concepts or players or what have you, like it kind of feels like we've been in that room. I guess we have been in the room a lot, but it seems like we've been in the room together years already. I think Daryl's very eager to learn, you know, from people and to get their opinions and to help to utilize his staff to form his own opinion. And I think it's been great, honestly. Like I'm excited going forward. I think the rapport has been awesome. So yeah, it's been a fun experience.
And to follow up on that, you mentioned earlier how it's going great so far with Daryl and what you just said right there. But it has still only been 2 weeks. So what challenges have you guys been presented with over the past 2 weeks to catch him up in that firefight, as you said, and get him ready for 2 nights from now?
I think the challenge is kind of like what we've all faced over these last few months. It's like, how do you deal with, you know, COVID, and our scouting staff is still remote, and you know, our coaching staff is just trickling in now, you know, because they've, you know, we're trying to keep the building clean. So I think just the timing of it and COVID, like the world's just not the same as it was a few months ago. And I think that presents challenges that we're all on Zoom right now. That's weird too. So I think it's just that. But I don't know that it's anything where I would say we feel like less prepared for the draft or this off season, which is Friday, or anything like that. I think I actually think we're like exceedingly prepared. You know, the scouts have been on these guys for the draft forever now. And I think we know, like, we've been able to get deeper on guys than time has ever permitted before. And like have the knowledge to be able to relay that, you know, to any new people that come in the building and say, like, here we go, like, we're ready, like, let's go.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Let's go back to Derek Bowder next.
Given the lack of a traditional tournament season and pre-draft process, like, do you put any more weight, especially for young players, freshmen who maybe struggle a little bit? Do you put any more weight in some of the pre-college tournaments like USA Basketball or Skills Academy or things like that? Is that different this year?
I don't think it's different. I think we actually always valued them a lot. If you think about a freshman, you know, maybe you see him 30 games in college. So if you go back and study throughout his AAU career and his college career or a high school career and whatever FIBA events he's played in, like, you just get so much more tape. It's valuable, and you see different contexts than he may or may not have had in college, or you know, different roles or different opportunities. So I think it's just essential. This year without all the other stuff is definitely weird. You know, no combine or no postseason events like Portsmouth and all of that stuff where you get to see a lot of guys. But yeah, I think anything pre-college is always valuable. Even honestly for upperclassmen, if they've been in a similar college context, you know, maybe a wing has always played with a particular type of point guard or whatever, and you want to see him on the ball a little bit more. You know, you go through old tape and you see if there's any indications or any flashes that you can glean any info from, and you try to weigh it appropriately. But yeah, like, it's always important.
Let's take two more. We'll start with Dan Gilston.
Hi. Just to build off that a little bit, I mean, do you feel like the board has really changed that much as to what it might have looked like in June? Have the prospects really been able to hurt or help their stock that much with the extra time?
I don't know how it is across the league. I would say for us, like we just stretched out the process, you know, like we were able to get some more questions, like really targeted questions on guys. Like, this element of this player might really dictate, you know, how good of an NBA player he is. So let's know it, like, to the extent that it's possible. So for as many challenges, I guess, as this different process presented, I think it also presented like a lot of unique opportunities, so much so that I think, you know, future pre-draft processes are gonna continue to adopt, you know, things we learned through these last few months. I'm actually very curious to see kind of what quote normal looks like in the future now.
That's a great point. A quick follow-up: is there something you guys have done as a team or as a league that you feel could benefit the way the draft process works leading up to hopefully a resumed schedule next June?
I mean, I guess like the most obvious one is people are going to learn the value of video, right? Like, it's just a really useful tool. And sometimes, you know, in a normal pre-draft process, you're traveling, so you just don't get the time and the access that you want. And sorry, did I just freeze? So yeah, like, you know, I do think that's going to be something that kind of adjusts how people think of player evaluation going forward.
I'm gonna have the last one come from Austin Krell.
Hey Vince, so for a guy like maybe like a Cole Anthony, that there have been, you know, some rumored you know, off-court things, or maybe not off-court things, but just sort of character questions. How do you sort of weigh that against the rest of a game like that? How do you take that into account when you're trying to evaluate a guy?
Yeah, I don't want to go into any like potential rumors or whatever with Cole's character. I think I would say how we evaluate the draft is knowing everything we can about every player, and from 1 to 25 or 60 or wherever we're picking, and be able to make the best decision possible and be ready. Every year guys fall for one reason or another, justified or not justified, or rumors of this injury or that injury or whatever off-court issue that like potentially comes up. Cole's obviously a talented kid. He was a guy that was ranked top 5 or whatever coming into college, and somebody we've known a lot about for a long time.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it. That's going to do it for today. If you need a link to the recording, just shoot me an email and I'll have that for you. But otherwise, have a great one.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep. See you guys.
Thank you, guys.